The lease was brittle paper, signed in a coffee shop that smelled of scorched milk and someone else's hurry. 48 hours later, I stood in the dim corridor of Wyndham Terrace. Key turning with a cough of metal, door swinging open onto a room that felt recently vacated by weather rather than by people. Afternoon light dragged its feet across a parquet floor dulled by forgotten polish. The air smelled of plaster dust and tea leaves left to wilt, an apartment shaped like a held breath. I'd come to the city to outrun an unfinished thesis, and the echo of a breakup whose arguments still clung to my coat sleeves. The ad promised quiet building, generous south-facing windows. It did not mention the hush inside 3B possessed weight, a hush granulated, textured, as though sound itself had been sifted out and stored elsewhere. I spent the first evening staking small claims: mattress on the floor, laptop on an upended box, soap perched on the sink like a timid guest. Every cupboard seemed impatient for plates. Yet beneath each mundane ritual, a prickle, the certainty of being watched by something eyeless. Old radiators gossip, I told myself. Floorboards remember heavier footsteps. Nothing supernatural about a room getting used to new lungs. The discovery came on night 2, after the rain started talking in Morse against the fire escape. I couldn't sleep. The silence was too specific, an active listening. I wandered, counting floorboards, when a faint mechanical click issued from the west wall, followed by a sigh no throat claimed. I pressed my ear to the paint-flaked plaster. There, a reel winding down hissed like tide. Behind a loosened outlet cover I found it, a micro-cassette recorder the size of a wallet, wires jury-rigged to the building's dormant phone line, tape spool idling at its clear window. Someone had fed it power, then sealed it into the wall as one might immure a prayer. The stop button was already depressed. It had finished its task. My pulse argued caution, but curiosity is a fast vandal. I pressed play. The tape crackled. Then a voice emerged. Female, mid-30s maybe, vowels carrying the fatigue of someone who has wrestled with her own name too long. Day 1. If you're hearing this, I wasn't brave enough to throw the tape away, which means you're standing where I stood, asking the room for patience. It won't give any. A pause, then a laugh, brittled by cigarettes. I've got 6 days left of this address. Not sure if that means 6 days left in general, but the math feels suspect. Rent's unpaid, sleep's unraveled. Every wall leans closer. I'm recording so the silence doesn't win by default. Rain hammered window panes. Lightning etched skeletons of fire escapes on the opposite wall. I sank to the floor, recorder balanced on my knee, listening as the stranger unspooled her last calendar like a frayed ribbon. She spoke of cupboards that whispered open at night, of spoons rearranged into unknown hieroglyphs, of voices on a disconnected phone reciting weather reports from decades past. But between the oddities threaded very ordinary wounds, an apology never mailed to a sister, the weight of bills that arrive already regret-stained, the peculiar humiliation of begging the mirror for a slower form of grief. Day 3, the voice rasped. I tried boarding the bedroom window, not to keep something out, to keep what's inside from spilling. Light has a way of telling secrets about the furniture. Did you know chairs remember who sat the longest? Mine creaks, a man's name. I can't say without shaking. She would fall silent, let the tape hiss like surf, then resume mid-sentence as though conversing with someone invisible who kept interrupting. By the timestamp marked day 5, her diction sharpened into eerie lucidity. I've decided the problem isn't the apartment. It's the echo of myself folded wrong, like a bedsheet stored damp, unfurls smelling of mildew narratives. A week is a neat perimeter. After that, rot claims what lingers. I will not linger. The reel spun on. I realized, chilled, that one day remained on her self-appointed clock. Did the recorder cut off before or after? Had the landlord removed a body? The lease hadn't mentioned any incident. The superintendent merely shrugged. Previous tenant left midsummer, didn't forward an address. Midnight bled toward dawn. When the tape ended, I rewound, but the spools jammed, plastic gears finally conceding their fatigue. Silence reoccupied the room like water seeping back into a footprint. Yet it was no longer neutral. It bore her outline. I lay on the mattress, recorder on the nightstand like a stethoscope pressed to a patient already pronounced. The radiator sighed, pipework settling as though imitating her breath. Sleeplessness braided with dread, but inside the dread glimmered something more dangerous: identification. Her catalogue of unravelings mapped too neatly onto the geography of my private fractures. Borrowed despair is still despair. It rents space without asking. Just before first light, I rose and pried the outlet plate wider, exposing the shallow cavity. I could have resealed the device, pretended ignorance, but the air tasted of unfinished sentences. I slid in a fresh cassette from an old answering machine, pressed record, and spoke. Day 1. The walls aren't empty anymore. They have inherited a witness. My voice shook, yet a strange clarity accompanied it. The sense of testifying not just for myself, but for the echo waiting on the tape that preceded mine. A relay passing darkness forward, in hopes its weight might eventually distribute into something bearable. I replaced the cover, smoothed paint flakes flat, and stepped back. Outside, dawn diluted the rain clouds to pewter. Inside, I listened to the room hold its breath around the new secret embedded in its bones. Have you ever felt that another person's ending might be rehearsing itself inside your own beginning? And if so, who turns off the recorder first? I spend the next morning tracing the apartment's edges the way a child drags a stick along a chain-link fence, testing the metal for weakness, waiting for a note to ring off key. From the doorway, 3B looks rectangular, but closer inspection reveals a narrowing corridor by the coat closet where the right-hand wall steals 2 inches from the left. The theft feels intentional, as if the architect once hoarded secrets by shaving half-shadows into corners. When sunlight slants through the south-facing windows, it breaks on those angles, projecting a shape that resembles an hourglass dropped mid-spin. The dust motes inside it swirl like loose sand, counting down to something unnamed. I catalogue each surface the way a coroner inventories bruises. The kitchen backsplash is tiled in olive glass, outdated, thumbprinted with grease that is not mine. Cabinet doors hang tongued and slack-jawed, hinges squeaking a vowel that never fully resolves. Beneath the sink I find a crumpled grocery receipt dated 14 months prior. Ink half bled, bread, instant coffee, hydrangea stems. Someone tried to buy life that would outlast its water. The building superintendent, Mr. Lowry, knocks at 10 and peers inside as if expecting smoke. Grey hair flattened by a cap, hands smelling of rubber gaskets. I ask whether the last tenant left a forwarding address. Only gave notice by phone, he says, voice flat as duct tape. Said the place needed airing. His eyes drift toward the wall where the recorder sleeps again. Some rooms do that. Hold breath too long. Before I can press further, he retreats, leaving the scent of WD-40 lingering like throat lozenges for machines. The hallway is a dull green throat with 6 doors, all numbered in brass except 3A, whose digits have tarnished beyond readability. I knock anyway. No answer, but a breeze pushes from beneath the jamb carrying the faint smell of boiled herbs and something electrical, ozone, after a socket sparks. Back inside 3B, I cup my hand against the wall and imagine the recorder's spool tightening the way muscles brace before a fall. It is silent, but silence now has a timbre, the hush of a stage when the understudy realizes the script is blank. I drag my mattress away from that partition, reposition it under the window. The relocation offers no relief, just a view of the alley where dumpsters glow red-eye under brake lights and fire escapes crosshatch the sky like unsuccessful sutures. On the far balcony, a woman waters plants at noon every day, her face obscured by a brimmed hat. The leaves drip steadily, the way IV bags leak measured mercy. I wonder if she heard the previous tenant's recorder through the wall and mistook confession for late-night radio. Day 2 on the second tape. By dusk, I've soldered a mini-jack cable from the recorder to my laptop. Jury-rigging power from an adapter scavenged at a thrift store. I press record and speak again. Voice low. Day 2. This apartment ticks. I cannot find the clock. I leave the device running and step out to buy groceries. Every aisle hums fluorescent autopsy. I choose items by the quietest shapes, bananas that won't clatter, yogurt that sighs when peeled. At checkout, the cashier asks if I want a receipt. I think of the one under the sink and shake my head. Returning, I find the hallway darker than before. Bulbs unlit, those switches haven't moved. My key stalls half-turn, then yields with a gasp. Inside, the apartment smells faintly of solder and diluted bleach, as if someone tried to disinfect memory. The recorder light blinks red, battery low. I rewind a few seconds. My own voice emerges, but beneath it another track ghosts through, softer, superimposed. Day -2. I can hear someone rehearsing grief in my walls. It is not my voice nor the woman from the first tape. A third narrator? Or the same, recorded on a loop that folded back. The timestamp reads 0012, a fragment overlaying my present like double-exposed film. Fear does peculiar trigonometry. It stretches angles until every corner feels acute. I search the closet for further cavities, but find only a rent receipt addressed to Ms. Hull Rowan, not the name on my lease. In pencil she has scrawled a question on the envelope's flap. How many days fit inside a single regret? The landlord's signature answers nothing, only circles the amount due. The building speaks through its teeth. At midnight, Pipes knock out a rhythm like knuckles on hollow wood. I follow the sound to the bathroom where the mirror is beginning to silver rot at its edges. Mercury motes flaking like snow in reverse. My reflection warps, wearing exhaustion as if it's been rented from someone taller. Behind me, the doorway looks narrower than before. I test the apartment's dimensions with a tape measure. North wall to south, 15 feet at dawn, 15 feet and 1/4 inch at midnight. The floorboards have drifted, or I have shrunk. I note the measurement inside a notebook and date it. The recorder's spool has stopped again. I press play. Day 4, the original tenant says, though my calendar insists it is still day 2. The room has started editing itself. Yesterday the kitchen window looked on a courtyard. Today it shows the same street but empty, as if evacuated before a siren. I step to my window. The alley remains, yet the dumpsters stand farther apart, allowing a sliver of asphalt I swear was not visible this afternoon. The balcony across is empty, the plants sag unwatered. Clouds shuttle faster than wind justifies. I rewind 10 seconds. Her voice returns, calm, almost pleased. I think the apartment is rehearsing a smaller version of itself, so it can fold around me neatly. Mapping for exit strategies. Morning brings power outages building-wide. I descend to the lobby where residents mill like words stripped of syntax. The woman from the balcony stands barefoot, hat in hand, eyes rimmed red. She clutches a watering can dented at the lip. I ask if she's from 3A. She whispers, "I thought I was," then curls into herself, shivering despite the muggy air. Mr. Lowry emerges from a service stairwell with a flashlight. "Transformer blue," he mutters, "could take hours." I want to ask about Ms. Rowan, about overlapping leases, but the lobby lights flutter back to life and conversation scatters. Back upstairs, the recorder's battery icon glows healthy green. A contradiction. I play the tape again, this time hearing my own earlier entry dovetail the stranger's newer one. My walls keep secrets like lungs keep air. I had said, "Air is just borrowed distance," her succeeding line replies. It sounds like dialogue stitched by architecture. I unplug the recorder, slip it into a messenger bag, and head for the public library's audio lab. Perhaps digital tools can separate tracks, isolate voices, reveal overlaps in time code. But halfway down the stairwell, the device whirs, rewinding itself. I stop, thumb hovering above stop, but the LEDs wink out. Dead. Outside, the sky adopts a bruised mauve, storm fronts stacking like unsent letters. I catch my reflection in the lobby glass and see sleep-stripped eyes, jaw clenched as if bracing for impact. I wonder if Miss Rowan once stood here, recorder in hand, considering escape routes that looped back inside. I turn around. I climb the stairs. The recorder is warm now, almost pulsing. Back in 3B, I set it on the floorboards and press record without speaking. Wind rattles panes, pipes stutter. Somewhere a radio jingle rises, then fades, though no radio is on. I let the tape run 10 minutes, then listen back. First hiss, then my heartbeat, amplified. Then a new voice, whispering near the microphone, syllables wet with rust. Day 6 begins when you decide to stop counting. I stop the tape, fingers numb. Outside the alley narrows another inch. I recognize the cadence as my own. I wake to find the refrigerator has migrated 3 inches east. The linoleum beneath it shows a paler rectangle, as if daylight had been protecting that patch of floor for decades. My phone, plugged in overnight, claims it is still yesterday. Outside, gulls wheel above city roofs that never see the sea. Time has become impressionistic, a smear of color that refuses to dry. I devour cereal straight from the box, afraid bowls will rearrange themselves if I blink. While I chew, I sketch the apartment's perimeter again. Graph paper taped end to end, black pen marking outlets, vents, door frames. The measurements recorded at dawn subtract a full inch from last night's. I label the drawing version 3. The first 2 versions flutter from the radiator like surrender flags. By mid-morning, the recorder behaves like a pet starving for voice. Any silence longer than a heartbeat triggers automatic rewind. Any sound, my breath, the crinkling cereal bag, starts a new track. I stop trying to control it and let the reels whirl. When I play back the latest section, I hear myself mutter, "I'm not leaving," followed by a second voice repeating, "I'm not leaving," then a third voice, fainter, "I'm leaving," until the sentence thins into static. I Google Miss Hal Rowan. The search returns a single obituary from 8 years ago. H. Alicent Rowan, 34, survived by an estranged sister, cause of death undisclosed. Yet rent receipts dated last spring bear her name. I scroll further and discover a zoning notice. Wyndham Terrace, condemned for electrical violations 12 months ago. My lease was countersigned by a management firm whose website 404's Mr. Lowry's number rings to a diner that closed in 2019. Panic would be logical now, but logic has been shedding limbs like a lizard evading capture. Instead, I feel curiosity calcify into resolve. I pull the outlet plate, detach the recorder, and unspool the cassette in slow motion. Each inch is annotated in cramped biro. Day marks, equations, stray lyrics. At the halfway point, the tape turns blank. No oxide, just clear plastic strip. I hold it to the light and see words etched with a pin. Space is a clock with no hands. When I let go, the tape recoils, winding the sentence back into darkness. I drill a pilot hole beneath the outlet. The bit bites soft wood, then emptiness. A cavity large enough to swallow a forearm yawns behind the plaster. My fingers brush velvet, ribbon, a crispness like old envelopes. One by one, I extract artifacts. A hotel keycard, 3 Polaroids of windows looking into darkness, a rubber eraser molded into a human ear, and finally, a composition notebook, the color of rust. The notebook opens from the back. Written in alternating blue and red ink, each entry begins with a floor plan of 3B, identical to mine, but each subsequent drawing slightly smaller. Beneath the last plan, the red ink switches to graphite, a single line. When walls touch, step through. Dusk folds around the building early, as if sun itself forgets the address. The balcony woman's apartment is dark, her plants hang skeletal, potting soil scattered like ashes. I watch rainbows of police tape drift in lamplight where her railing once was. The alley narrows again, now barely wide enough for a trash truck. A dumpster stands tilted, wheels removed. With twilight pressing, I drag every piece of furniture to the center of the room, mattress, crates, upended chair, and measure the empty perimeter, 14 feet, 9 inches. I close my eyes, count to 10, measure again, 14 feet, 8 3/4 inches. The room contracts like a lung exhaling stone dust. I set the recorder atop the shrinking border and speak. Day. Lost count. I think the apartment is almost done resizing the story. If the walls meet, will they seal or open? Unknown. Leaving might preserve me. Staying might explain everything. The tape clicks off by itself. It rewinds, then ejects. There is no more tape inside. Wind rattles the window. No, not wind. The glass bows inward, as if nudged by an outside pressure equal to the fear behind my ribs. I press my palm to the pane and feel neither cold nor warmth, only a pulse that syncopates with my own. I retrieve the drill, enlarge the cavity behind the outlet until plaster snow drifts on my shoes. On the far side, a shadowed gap descends between studs, wide enough perhaps to crawl. Beyond it, I smell dry air, dust, and a faint electrical hum like distant applause. I lift the flashlight, aim it into the staved-in wall, and see another key, the doorless frame of a space identical to 3B, same parquet, same olive tiles, but reduced, a dollhouse room nested inside mine. At the center of its floor sits a second recorder, red light blinking, already listening. Without thinking, I drop to my knees, shoulders squeezing into the aperture. Sheetrock scrapes my arms. As I pass the threshold, I hear furniture groan behind me, sliding across parquet toward converging walls. The air inside the smaller room tastes of static and pencil shavings. I reach for the recorder. My fingers tremble an inch above the stop button. From the speaker leaks a whisper that sounds like tomorrow describing itself in past tense. Day 1, the walls aren't empty anymore. They have inherited a witness. Before I can decide whether the voice is mine, the opening behind me sighs shut. The new space is smaller by the thickness of a single heartbeat, narrow enough that my shoulders brush both side walls when I breathe too deeply. The parquet underfoot has been sanded down to ghost grain, boards stripped of varnish until they resemble the pages of a book too often erased. I circle once, twice, measuring by feel because the tape measure stayed behind. Each turn leaves me certain the perimeter has shortened while I blinked. The recorder, brighter than any object should be in this murk, sits on a plank whose nails are hammered in the pattern of Morse. Long, long, short, short, long. I can't translate, but my bones seem to. The red LED pulses like a throat clearing before confession. I press play. Hiss. Then my own voice, recorded minutes ago in the outer apartment, pours back at me, syllables scuffed like vinyl under a dull stylus. But halfway through the sentence, it forks. One branch continues in my cadence, the other slips sideways into a second timbre, so close to mine, it makes the air feel fraudulent. Walls aren't empty anymore. Aren't empty, they are what's left of a louder silence. The overlap phrase grammar, sound drooping like damp laundry. I hit stop, eject the cassette, and find two spools inside. One marked with a black segment of tape, the other clear, immaculate. A gap divides them, a literal inch of missing story. I picture the previous tenant, Rowan or her echo, snipping tape to create a pause big enough for someone else's breath. My flashlight coughs and dies. Darkness arrives like ink spilled in water, fast, blooming, determined to claim whole shapes before thought can name them. I feel along the wall for the outlet I entered. Nothing, just chilled plaster that exhales dust into my mouth. Panic surges, animal and bright until my knuckles find a seam, a faint vertical tug of colder air. I press, but the panel refuses to budge. A sound behind me, furniture moving where none exists, turns my spine to wire. I pivot, flashlight useless. In the dark, I hear parquet splinter, boards contracting. A memory sharpens. Rowan mentioning chairs that remember names. I picture one tugging itself from the shrinking floorboards, dragging history after it like a wounded leg. I shut my eyes. Complete darkness inside, complete darkness, and count backward from 50. At 19, the recorder clicks on of its own accord. A voice emerges. Not mine, not Rowan's. Calm, clipped, genderless. Proximity threshold reached. Final phase initiates. The words fall flat, bureaucratic. A tape spool whirs. The floor creaks twice. Then another sentence, slower, almost fond. Thank you for supplying the remainder. Lights bloom. No flashlight, but fluorescence embedded in a ceiling I know wasn't here seconds ago. Their glow is the sterile yellow of hospital corridors. The room is now rectangular, edges crisp, too precise. The recorder has vanished. In its place sits a drafting table bolted to the floor. On it, a single blueprint rolled open beneath a sheet of glass. The linework depicts Wyndham Terrace, every apartment in cross-section except 3B, which is rendered as nested boxes, each smaller, spiraling inward like a matryoshka until the lines blur into graphite dust. A mechanical pencil rests in the center, sharpened to a needle. Its barrel bears an engraving, Rowan & Co., Spatial Solutions. Under that, a date, 6 months from now. My skin prickles. I scan for exits. The walls are frictionless, no seams, no door, only a vent near the ceiling, too high, too narrow. The air tastes of photocopier ozone. I flatten my palms on the glass, studying the blueprint's smallest box. Inside that micro-rectangle is a circle labeled Witness Termination. Around it, infinitesimal script repeats. Space is a clock with no hands. I lift the pencil, touch its tip to the paper, and the lights dim as if the building itself is inhaling. When I press harder, trying to erase the inner circle with graphite, the glass beneath cracks not outward but inward, slicing the blueprint into petals that curl down into a void. Out of reflex, I yank my hand back, pencil clattering. The blueprint has healed, uncreased, yet the layout has changed. The innermost circle is gone, replaced by an empty square exactly the size of this room. In its center, a tiny X marks what? A target, a window, a grave plot scaled to fit one story. Overhead, the fluorescents flicker, words clack from hidden speakers. Occupant acknowledged, collapse complete. The floor tilts 2 degrees. Gravity, fickle, rolls the drafting pencil toward a new crack along the baseboard. I drop to my knees, pry up the board with fingernails until it splinters, revealing another cavity, smaller, darker, breathing the cold of cellars. I lie flat, shoulder squeezed, and push my arm into the void. My fingertips brush soft fabric, then cardboard edges. I tug, pull free a shoebox tied with audio tape instead of string. Inside, dozens of thumb-sized cassettes, each labeled with unit numbers, 3C, 4A, 2D, each annotated final. Beneath them, a Polaroid, Mr. Lowry, smiling beside demolition equipment. The caption reads, "Vacancy achieved, cycle resets." A second photo shows the building's facade draped in a banner, "Coming soon, Rowan & Co. Micro-Residencies." My gut sinks. Apartments designed to shrink themselves, harvest the narratives of tenants until they fit the glossy brochures. A final cassette has no label, only scratch marks gouging the plastic. I slide it into the recorder, somehow now on the drafting table again, and press play. The tape is blank for 11 seconds, then my voice spills out, 1 octave lower. Day 0. If you're hearing this, I found a door smaller than escape. I slam stop, heart detonating. The floor tilts again, blueprint curls inward. The walls contract without groan, like polite lungs exhaling a useless breath. I grab the blueprint and tear at the edges. Every rip heals seconds later, printing fresher ink. I return to the vent, drag the drafting table beneath it. Standing on the tabletop, I pry at the grill with the mechanical pencil until one screw gives way. Warm air rushes out, carrying the scent of distance. Rain on asphalt, taxis, living city. I wedge fingers into the gap, widen enough to slip an elbow. Sheet metal slices skin, blood marks the grill's edge. I anchor my weight, lever upward, and the vent screams, metal tearing like fabric. Cold dust and insulation swirl as I haul myself into the duct. Behind me, the room contracts. The table screeches across fingernail width of floor. I crawl, knees on corrugated tin, arms trembling. The shaft narrows every yard, but I keep moving until breath rasps, until knees jam against aluminum. Ahead, a faint blue wash hints at daylight through louvered slats. I push, bend louvers, feel them snap, then wine slaps my face. Outside air, sirens distant, city alive. I squeeze, ribs bruising, gravity tilting as the shaft spits me onto a fire escape landing 3 stories above the alley. Night rain needles my skin. I look back. The apartment's window is gone, replaced by fresh brick, the color of wet ash. No sign of 3B, no olive tiles, no recorder. Below, the alley has returned to normal width. A trash truck reverses, beeping. A man in coveralls stubs out a cigarette, unaware of the blueprint room still folding itself behind the wall. I clutch the shoebox of cassettes, heart drumming like an alarm that no one else can hear. Wyndham Terrace looms silent, windows dark. But for a moment I think I see a light blink behind a brick seam. Red, steady, the size of a recorder's LED, before it winks out and the building sighs, adjusting to a new, smaller story that no one but its walls will ever learn. Rain slicks the iron rungs of the escape ladder as I descend, shoebox clutched like contraband. Every step shivers under my weight. Rust flakes away in paper-thin ribbons, fluttering down 3 stories to spatter against puddles that reflect a building no longer quite the one I entered. When my soles finally slap the alley, I expect to hear the world roar back into ordinary scale. Truck engines, subway tremor, someone arguing over whose turn it is to buy cigarettes. Instead there's a hush, as if Wyndham Terrace still presses silence outward in rings. I hurry toward the street lamp halo, mind ducking through questions. Where did 3B go? Who architects apartments that cannibalize themselves? And why does a dead tenant's company name appear on the hardware? The shoebox bumps my ribs. Inside, cassettes rattle like teeth shivering in cold. A taxi idles at the curb, radio murmuring late-night sports. The driver eyes my scraped arms, the blood dried at the vent cuts. Long night, he asks. I give an address without thinking, anywhere that isn't here, and slump into the vinyl seat. When we pull away, I watch Wyndham Terrace recede in the rear window. From this angle the bricks look normal, but the windows are black squares, perfectly aligned, none showing the slight sag I noticed on move-in day. The building has corrected its posture, an imposter wearing its own skin. The temporary safe house of motion. I rent a room by the hour in a downtown pod hotel, one of those coffin-bright capsules with LED circadian lights and a vent that exhales peppermint. I lock the door, line the floor with towels, and dump the cassettes like spilled seed. Labels spiral, Final 4B, Final 5D, listen only. One tape bears the matte gouges of someone carving letters over letters until nothing is legible except the violence of correction. The pocket recorder survived the crawl. I pop in Final 2D, press play. Static marches. Then a child's voice murmurs multiplication tables, but with numbers missing. 2 times 3 is 8. 2 times 4 is blank. A woman interrupts, so tired she sounds skeletal. Sweetheart, stop. The walls will take the answers if you leave blanks. Tape ends in a clatter, as if recorder fell on its side. I try another. Final 4B begins with operatic aria echoing through distance. Then a man's sobbing, short, ragged gasps. Between each gasp, a mechanical voice reads architectural dimensions. Egress width, 61 centimeters. Acceptable occupant volume, 0.8 of human average. The sobbing stops before the voice does. Silence blooms, more awful than static. I listen until dawn cramps through the blackout shade. By the 30th tape patterns emerge. Every voice speaks in dwindling rooms, each recording shorter than the last, as if space and narrative shrink simultaneously. No one signs off. They fade, absorbed mid-sentence. I catalogue lengths and draw them on hotel stationery, a bar graph of despair. Each successive tenant lasted fewer hours before the room reached its final phase. My own timeline hovers near the bottom of the page. I circle it, then draw an arrow past the axis, an audacious claim that my story might slip their algorithm. Paper trails with missing coordinate. The public registrar opens at 9. Under fluorescence that hums like old televisions, I request property deeds for Wyndham Terrace. The clerk prints microfiche scans. Original tenement 1925, ownership transferred 6 times, latest buyer Rowan & Co., Spatial Solutions. The purchase closed 3 months after Alicent Rowan's obituary, a dead woman's company purchasing the building she rented. I ask if the company has other properties. The clerk shrugs, offers me a decade-old trade show flyer, Rowan & Co., housing the future at half the footprint. The logo shows concentric rectangles collapsing like shutter blades. A note scribbled in the margin, maybe by a bored archivist, says prototype trials suspended after incident. No details. I photograph everything, then head for the city planning office. Half the staff is remote today. A junior archivist lets me comb unlabeled boxes. I unearth a single blueprint stamped Prototype 7. It depicts a floor plan identical to 3B, but nested within 4 larger outlines, each annotated with event horizon measurements. In red pen, witness termination achieved. My palms sweat onto the vellum. Whoever drafted these diagrams understood how to fold livable space around a human story until both vanished. Echoes seek new walls. Night again. I sit on a bench facing the river, cassette Walkman scavenged from a junk shop, headphones crackling in the wind. I load the unlabeled, scratch-scarred tape, press play. Silence, then my own breath cycles through but sped up, pitched lower. It isn't a copy, these are breaths I haven't taken yet, arranged in panicked clusters. Between them, the mechanical voice returns. Occupant variant accepted. Externalization protocol ready. Footsteps stamp along concrete mine, I think. Then a door slams metal. The voice, square footage stabilized. Generate replacement narrative. I rip the headphones off. The tape keeps spinning, spools turning like prayer wheels. I toss the Walkman toward the water, but the headphone cord yanks it back, snagged on the bench arm as if refusing escape. A thought detonates. If Rowan & Co. can harvest chambers of human experience, maybe the recordings are templates for new units. Each captured breakdown compresses into square footage math. The building learns, shrinks, sells, and with every cycle it needs a fresh witness to finalize the dimensions, someone to record that last gasp of narrative mass. I could run forever. Another building might have another cavity, waiting, or I could break the loop. Designing a different collapse, I return to Wyndham Terrace at 3 a.m. The streetlight bulbs have been swapped. Bright daylight LEDs now announce RE opening soon. A van idles. Men in high-vis vests, cart boxes emblazoned with the Rowan & Co. logo inside. Renovation is already underwriting tragedy. I slip through the side door propped by a paint can. Hallways stripped, drywall gutted. Units stand exposed like organs under autopsy lights. In the cavity that was once 3B, only framing remains. Workers removed partitions to reveal nested boxes. My smaller room, now sitting on bare joists, ready to be craned out like a tumor. I crawl into its shell, blueprint table gone, vent grill welded shut, tiny holes dot the studs, nail marks where recorders once hid. From the shoebox I choose listen only. I jam it into the recorder I carried back, press record and play simultaneously, letting the device devour its own signal in a doomed loop. Feedback squeals, a shriek that rattles copper pipes. I thumb volume to maximum, then wedge the recorder behind a stud. Microphone pointed into the hollow of the nesting room. The scream escalates, a sine wave soaring air. Downstairs, workers shout, tools clatter, screeching frequencies scatter pigeons from the roof. Drywall vibrates, studs tremor like tuning forks. I back away toward the corridor, heart slamming. Above me, a ribbon of plaster cracks, a crawling fissure that races past fire escape anchors. The building groans, but not the quiet, polite contraction I remember. This is a roar, a refusal. Exit lights flicker. The recorder's wail fuses with twisting metal. Sprinkler pipes rupture, rain falling indoors. As I stumble outside, a plume of dust erupts from third-floor windows, followed by the deafening snap of joists giving up. The nested room collapses inward, imploding like a lung punctured by its own breath. Sirens converge. I hide in the shadow of a pay-parking kiosk, shoebox tight to my chest. Firefighters swarm, but they cordon only a small section. Damage isolated, they say. From my angle I see the building's flanks sag, windows misalign, geometry finally confessing its crime. A medic checks me for head wounds. I sign a refusal. In his mirrored sunglasses I glimpse Wyndham Terrace splitting hairline cracks along its brick seams, as if reluctant to hold stories any longer. Is it over? Buildings are stubborn. They heal, adapt, rebuild smarter. Yet I carry their archive now. Tapes of borrowed despair, a blueprint showing how narrative can be reduced to square footage, and the certainty that patterns replicate where profit beckons. Across the street, a banner flaps on another vacant structure. Future site of micro-residences. Efficient living starts here. No company logo yet. Only blank space waiting for a brand. I open the shoebox. With trembling hands, I pull a cassette, peel off its final label, and write begin across it. I slip it into the recorder, press play, and let the river of sirens, rain, and distant city heartbeat overwrite everything it used to hold. One tape can carry only so much breakdown before it erases itself. Perhaps the same is true of rooms, of people. I walk toward the subway, pocket heavy with cassettes still untitled, wondering which walls will try to recruit my voice next and how loud I must speak to keep them from learning how to shrink around someone else. Morning splits open like an overripe peach above the skyline. I find myself sitting on the eastbound platform with the shoebox balanced on my lap, steel rails humming underfoot. The service map overhead lists every stop but the one I need. It always has. My knuckles graze duct-taped corners. For a moment I consider pitching the whole archive onto the tracks and letting the first commuter train pulverize its grief into ferrite dust. Instead, I pry the lid, pull the next cassette. Blank, no label, magnetic reel gleaming like a nervous retina. I slip it into the recorder and thumb record. The red light steadies. An LED heartbeat synced to mine. I close the lid before the platform crowds, stand and board the first train regardless of its direction. Inside, fluorescent bulbs stutter wakefulness across half-empty cars. A woman in a peach trench coat nods off over an economics textbook marked in 3 colors of highlighter. A man with carpenter's hands twirls a hex key, practicing quiet revolutions. Every seat hums private audio podcasts, music, life instructions whispered through earbuds. I listen to their hush mixing with the metallic jounce of wheels, while the city unfolds in grime-streaked windows. The recorder captures it all. I imagine the tape layering sound on sound, stubble scraping coffee lids, rusted joints of overhead piping, someone's phone apologizing for low battery. No story arcs, just continuous presence refusing compression. We lurch beneath the river tunnel, walls rushing by like unspooled film. I wonder if water presses here as relentlessly as silence once pressed my apartment's walls. If the city shore has measurable give. The cassette winds on. I allow myself to believe that this is proof. Chaos too wide to harvest, too unsorted to repurpose. I exit at a transfer hub bathed in underground sodium light. The lunchtime crowd surges, erasing the outlines of passengers into a single breathing organism. Booth after booth sells lives in transit. Sell battery rentals, salt-soft pretzels glossed to mirror finish, newspapers that will line bird cages by dusk. Between 2 kiosks stands a pop-up real estate display. Foam core renders of micro-apartments hang like trading cards. 125 seeks fit of thoughtful minimalism, queen-sized loft bed over a desk, clearly too narrow for elbows. The salesman chirps square meter math, quoting monthly costs still swollen beyond reason. But I see no Rowan branding. I slide closer, scan the fine print. A different logo, white spiral inside grey circle, claims the designs. New firm, same promise. Don't pay for what you don't need. I step back, bump into a security bollard, and feel the recorder in my pocket throb its ongoing capture. Across the hall, a janitor swings mop strokes in arcs that span more floor than any room on these posters. Some spaces exist because people insist on moving differently. The archive disperses. I ride escalators to street level, emerging into staccato sunshine. On the plaza stand 10 stainless steel donation bins shaped like giant mailboxes. Free books / take one. I cradle the shoebox against my ribs. This city swallows garbage but digests stories in stranger ways. One by one I slip unlabeled cassettes through the book slot. They thunk down the chute among dog-eared paperbacks and mismatched chess pieces. I keep 3 tapes. Begin, listen only. It's shell-cracked during the building collapse, and the blanks still recording. The rest become urban mulch, unindexed artifacts waiting for random hands. Perhaps a lonely commuter will snag one, decipher its content, and hear caution or companionship. Perhaps the bins will ship to a recycling depot and shred them unsent. Either outcome breaks Rowan's chain. The plaza's digital billboard flickers, advertising an immersive housing expo next weekend, concept pods, volumetric efficiency metrics. I lift my phone, snap a picture, and send it to every reporter address I can find, attaching scans of the prototype blueprint. Subject line: apartments that eat their tenants. No context, no name. Flood them with questions, maybe one sticks. Proof of volume. I take the train north to the waterfront district where warehouses rot beside luxury condos. At Pier 47 sits an old maritime museum. A tugboat cab welded onto a kiosk that hands out pamphlets nobody wants. Inside, the custodian lets me swap one of the tapes for a set of bolt cutters from the lost and found bin. Outside again, I walk the pier to its fenced terminus, snap the chain, and step into an area marked condemned, keep out. Salt wind thrashes my coat. Beneath creaking boards the river pulses, opaque and silt-heavy. I lower listen only by its broken tape leader into a gap between planks. Dark water accepts it without sound. I flick play before release, just to hear a final feedback squeal vanish into current. If the river wants stories, let it unspool this one until oxide flakes feed catfish. The room you carry. Dusk, again. I find myself climbing the fourth-floor fire escape of a building still under scaffolding. Through window gaps I glimpse fresh drywall, gleaming appliances sheathed in plastic. No tenants yet. I crouch, crack open the final recorder hatch, retrieve the loop still capturing ambient life. I rewind, listening to steel wheels, plaza shouts, waves under piers, noise too plural to fit in any blueprint. With marker pen I scrawl across the cassette shell. Continue. Then careful, I slide it under the sill where wind howls through insulation gaps. Whoever signs this lease will begin with a tape already alive. Not a lure, but an inoculation. A riotous, unedited overflow that refuses to tidy itself into shrinkable narrative. With that done, I descend. Street lamps spill amber cones across scaffold mesh. Above me, unfinished apartments stand hollow and echoing, waiting to decide what stories they'll demand. But the tape will speak first, a chaos they can't abbreviate without ruining its marketable quiet. Remaining square footage. Home, that word means any place behind me tonight. I set no GPS, just walk until city noise settles into something breathable. A laundromat still running its late spin cycle, offers plastic chairs and overhead blues music. I feed quarters, strip off blood-specked shirt, and sit in undershirt watching fabrics churn. The recorder sits on my knee, empty now. I press record. The clacking washers, buzz of soda machine, rattle of hangers colliding, the device ingests it all. I speak one sentence for whomever might excavate this tape. Rooms shrink when stories fit too neatly, let yours spill. I tuck the recorder into the drum with the clothes. Soap, water, revolution. When the cycle ends, the machine unlocks, the recorder blinks. Still functional, still tracking hours of unremarkable humidity and detergent slosh. I leave it in the lost and found basket, along with a note, free space, keep recording. Outside, a neon sign miles away sputters mini flats now leasing. I lift my collar against rising wind and walk on, measuring nothing, refusing to fit.